Last week in a video, I shared about my journey integrating these two conflicting worlds of spirituality, the mystical, the magical, and ordinary mundane life, which we all kind of find ourselves in generally day to day, and how to bring these two worlds together so that we are walking a path of peace, so that we are walking a path in joy, in abundance, in flow, in grace. And I shared a little bit about the processes that I've found work for me in that walk, in that daily walk in an ordinary life, and how I have increasing amounts of peace in my life because of this experience that I've now created as a ritual, a spiritual, root word ritual, walk. And I want to talk a little bit about rather than the processes that I've gone through to get here, but rather the effects, the mystical, magical, miraculous effects of walking this path of surrender and realizing that spiritual is not all bright lights and unicorns and fairies and astral travel, but it can actually be very, very profoundly peaceful within the ordinary. I want to touch on that point about spiritual and ritual. I think one of the fundamental foundations, if you like, of walking a spiritual life is recognizing the merit of ritual, of recognizing that spirituality can be experienced through ritual. I mean, if you look at the ancient mythologies and tales from the wise sages and teachers, we see that ritual plays a huge part in the human walk into a spiritual integrated experience. And so what is the ritual in your life? How much importance have you placed on ritual in your life? And what are some of the solid evidence in your life that ritual is creating indeed a peaceful path? I want to talk a little bit about some of the effects here from this whole experience. I think that a lot of you will resonate here when I share some of these experiences with the daily practice of ritual. Now, first, before I go into some of the effects, what are my daily rituals? Well, very much important that I surrender the small self every day without fail. The ego wants to come back and take control every day. When I awake in the morning, I take a big deep breath. I ask myself, who am I? And I remember, I make it important to remember my true self and come from that perception as I step out of bed to start my day. Some days are harder than other days. Sometimes if I've had a bad sleep, or if I have a particularly situation in my life that's worrying or creating anxiety because my small self wants to control it, it's sometimes going to be very difficult to calm the mind and allow the higher self to come into full mastery or command of the small self. It's not easy every day, but it gets easier from my experience. Another ritual is that I make sure that I meditate. Now, for me, meditation is not just sitting down and listening to someone speak. That's not the point. The point is that I am stepping out of the doing experience of being human, which can very much be a distraction and escapism. And I'm taking a moment to acknowledge my true self, which is pure awareness, which is stillness. So I am being myself. I'm being with myself, and I'm honoring my true self. I'm being myself. And so stillness is not a luxury. It's a part of reconnecting, if I need to attune again to my true self. Remembering, coming back into the membership of my true self and realigning with that channel that connects myself to wisdom, intelligence, guidance, intuition, all of the fruits of the spirit that are accessed when we surrender. And so I am, in effect, essentially, I am surrendering. I'm letting go of Melise and all of her little stories and trauma reactions. And I'm giving myself a chance to reconnect, commune with Source. That's an important ritual. That's probably one of the most important rituals in my daily life. Another one is that I make sure that if I've had a particularly eventful situation in a day, if I've been triggered, if someone's pushed my buttons, if my buttons have been pushed, if I have a strong emotional reaction in some way, if I catch myself getting lost in worry or anxiety or overthinking, if I feel any kind of narrative or story overtaking my experience of being able to be through the eyes of pure loving awareness and pull me back into the limitations of my small self, I journal. And sometimes that journaling doesn't necessarily involve a pen and paper, but I take the time to stop and acknowledge and validate that situation, because when we do that, we are illuminating our shadows, our blind spots. Those patterns that work covertly because we don't see them cannot operate the same way if we take intentional time to see them. And so for me, journaling is very important. It is a continuous journey of illuminating my shadows so that they cannot operate the same way anymore. And you'll notice if you do this, that life becomes gradually lighter. You feel lighter because you're letting go of a lot of density, a lot of weight that you've been carrying. And it takes an awful lot of energy to operate these programs that our small self wants to keep alive. So that's the lightness you start to feel when you let those things go, when you release them. Another part of my ritual in my daily life is taking time out to play. And I've talked about this a lot, but it's essential. It's not a luxury. I've said this so many times. It's not a luxury. Play is part of our joie de vivre, the joy of life. This is what is essentially part of the magic of being human. We receive inspiration and creativity and insights during play. Necessary, very necessary. So play is something that I'm learning because it wasn't something that came as so naturally after a lot of trauma. So I have had to relearn how to play and allow myself permission, let go of the controls of the small self, override that program that I have to be doing all the time to be worthy. And another part of my daily ritual is nature. I have to get outside. I have to remember I am part of nature. I am reinvigorated by nature. I am re-energized by nature. Nature is part of me. I am part of it. Her, Gaia. I have to go out and I know, because I've always been naturally a very visual person, a very activated person, very sensitive. Nature wakes me up, and it's a really great way to remind you who you are. It's wonderful to be able to surround yourself in nature because it very much helps you stay in awareness rather than getting caught up in the stories and narratives of our three-dimensional world. Nature can bring us back to reality, to base reality. So essential. During summer, I head out to the beach. I'm not far, about 20 minutes at the moment, take my shoes off and make it a point to stick my feet in the sand in the salt water and do a contemplative walk or a stillness walk. And sometimes I listen to something I feel like listening to, but essentially it's about nature. It's about stepping out of the doing of life and experiencing that harmony and alignment with nature again. I think that's an important ritual. Do you? Have you tried that? And another part of my daily rituals, I've mentioned this before, is deep breathing. I have to take time out, and it's become much more of a sustained habit in my life because I've been practicing for a couple of years now. intentionally where I stop to take deep breaths. And a little reminder, if you're not deep breathing from the belly, you're often finding yourself in survival mode. Fight, flight, freeze. We need to come back to our body and allow the flow of energy to come deep inside our biosystem and provide that nourishment. Deep breathing allows us to relax. It slows our brain waves down. We're always in a beta brainwave state. We're always hyper alert. We're always on. It's difficult for the mind to stop and allow the heart to come out if we're always in beta brainwave state. So deep breathing allows us to move back down into theta alpha brainwave state, where we can slow our brainwaves, where we can calm down, where we can move into a gentle joy and relaxation. This is really essential, I believe, to our health, body, mind, spirit. So that's an important ritual for me. Now, they're the main ones. There are other ones that are not every day, such as the importance of recognizing that I need to be around people that I love and that I respect and that I am inspired by. People that love me, support me, that I can love and support. Having a little tribe or a big tribe, whatever suits you. I'm an introvert, so I generally enjoy a little tribe. But I've realized that this is essential as well. There are many other things: food, exercise, fresh water, clean air, good sleep, that are a part of an essential ritual which can bring our spiritual walk into more harmony and coherence. What are some of the effects? What are some of the effects of walking this path? Number one, I want to emphasize the importance of surrender. This journey is surrender. The spiritual path is surrender, because it's surrendering the small self. So when you let go of your personality, of your self-identity, of all the trauma and the wounding that comes with that programming, when you allow yourself to let that go and stop identifying with that as you, that's when you start to experience flow. And what is flow? Flow is when things just appear to work in your life, and there's less feeling that you're using willpower or force. Flow is the absence of force. It is where seemingly separate events, circumstances, people, goals, dreams come together into some harmony or congruence or alignment that you never thought was possible, and that pleasantly surprises you often. Have you had this experience of flow? I have certainly been having that a lot, and it's increasing. One of the things that I use as an indicator, and I love this just because I'm very visual and I love seeing signs, is the clock. When I'm not in looking for the time and I glance at the clock, lately I've been receiving such patterned numbers. It's funny and it's beautiful. And then there's the situations in your life where you might get a call from a friend you were just thinking of, or you might have a friend offer you a job and you were just declaring to everyone that you were going to start working in that field. Or perhaps you strike friendship with someone who is already friends with someone else in your life in this big old world. Perhaps it's a dream you have that the next day appears to be prophetic. It appears to be exactly in alignment with what you just dreamed. Or a message you have in a dream that is exactly what you needed to hear. And when you take that action, it's in flow again. And that's when we start to really listen, when we start to stop seeing these things as coincidence, because I don't actually believe in coincidence. When we stop seeing these things in our life as just random, and we actually start to see them as flow, as something that we have intentionally decided for our lives we're going to do, surrender into flow. The magic of that new way of being doesn't seem to go away, at least in my experience. It gets stronger and stronger. And you notice the days where your small self wants to take control back, because it feels like things go back into randomness. And, you know, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or you stub your toe, or these little things happen that you start to get into a frustration, and you fall back into disempowering thoughts, words, and deeds, and that randomness comes back. I'm noticing that perhaps it's because I'm more in flow lately, but I'm noticing that those moments where I'm really frustrated because life suddenly feels really random and upsetting are like wake-up calls again. I'm actually, thankfully, starting to see a pattern. And this is the pattern. When I go through these random periods where life becomes frustrating and disempowering, I immediately recognize that I'm out of flow, that I have stopped surrendering, and I'm able to just let go again. And flow comes back. And it seems to be a faster recovery every time. Is this your experience too? Because this is happening in my life. The more that I am able to see the truth, that I've stopped surrendering, the quicker I'm able to get back into surrender, the quicker I'm able to get back into flow. I'd love to hear if this is your experience too. I was thinking about, this is really random, but back in 1999, I was 19. Well, I was 18 for most of that year because my birthday is December. And I always said for years after this particular year that was my favorite year. And okay, I'm 43 now, so that was a good 23 years ago, 24 years ago. Wow. And only recently I've actually questioned, what was it about that year that made it so favorited by myself? What was it? And so I actually sat down and I dissected that year. And it was very insightful. And I wanted to share this because you might actually find some insights out of this too. I was 18, 19. My career, okay, I was working at a cafe at a wharf in Mooloolaba on the Sunshine Coast. It was a beautiful location. It was essentially an open air cafe with an inside area. I got to be around the wharf every day. I got to smell I love the smell of wharves for some reason. I got to be around people, tourists who were coming through this area. It was a tourist rich area. People were generally in a good mood. I worked with the coolest boss. He was like an uncle. He was so cool. He was a wonderful person. He was just so relaxed and easygoing. He made jokes all day long, and we all loved him. I worked with young people that were my age that were also excited to be there. I lived around, and I didn't have any worries in the world about my career at this point. I was like, oh, that can wait. I'm enjoying myself. And I really was. I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I wasn't thinking about the pressure of a career climbing or the pressure of study, or I didn't have anxiety, which is fear of the future, projecting my worst fears into the future. I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was really enjoying my experience of working there. I also financially, I always just had enough. I didn't have too much and I didn't have too little. So I wasn't really thinking about finances, and I wasn't stockpiling. I just, finances weren't a thing in my mind. I had enough from my job. And I didn't have much spending. I lived a very simple life. And I lived week to week, but it worked for me. I was happy. In terms of fun in my life, I actually was playing a lot. Granted, I was 18, so I had discovered the clubbing scene, but I didn't want to drink a lot at this point. For some reason, I went through a phase where it was all about the dancing. And I lived around the corner from the wharf where I worked and the club where we went to on the weekends, which was also at the wharf. So I literally had a 5-minute walk to work every day in the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Beautiful weather, like 300 days a year of sunshine or something. And I lived with my best friend. And we were thick as thieves. We had each other. I also worked with my friends. So two of the guys that worked at the Wharf Cafe with me lived across from our unit. So the four of us would hang out all the time. And my boss would come over sometimes. So you can see how it was this small tribe, people I loved and trusted that I felt supported with, a very small, tight-knit area that I had to navigate each day. I was never in the car. Don't think I even had a car at that point. Where I lived was in a beautiful part of the world in nature. I look at that time and I recognize now why I always called that one of my favorite years. Do you see where I'm going here? As I got older, I felt the pressure of having to fit into a success model, having to have a career trajectory, having to feel valuable because of my financial status, and feel all this pressure actually pushed me away from making friendships important in my life. I ended up using drinks, alcohol, later after that stage because of all the pressure I was putting myself. Alcohol was a coping mechanism I developed after that. So now clubbing and going out and socializing became accompanied with alcohol. So I stopped actually being able to enjoy myself around good people, and I started making friends with anyone. That's what happens when you tend to drink a lot. And so life I was in a beautiful position, but life kind of had another plan for me at that point, and I ended up on a hiatus for 20 years, and I am so grateful for that hiatus. Yes, I am. I don't regret it, because I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't understand things like I do today if I hadn't have had that contrast and that experience. I wouldn't be a coach and counselor like I am today, and understanding and empathizing with people who've been through similar situations. But it's interesting, isn't it? So the takeaways I got from revisiting that favorite year were that career, it's not about the future. It has to, for me, my work has to be about today. How can I bring joy and affect change today? Even if it's just one person, I bring a smile to their face. I don't have that pressure about tomorrow. I'm not going to bring that into my life anymore. I'm not going to buy into that anymore. It's not about proving my worth, as I understood and practiced when I was 18, 19. I'm not here to prove anything. And I've left that path, that hiatus. I'm not doing that anymore. Financially, for the longest time, I put so much pressure on myself that I had to be accumulating wealth. At what point did that make me happy? It never did. Insatiable. You can't actually create a end point if you've got this desire for wealth, that it can become never ending. So I wanted to really pull back from all these things that took me on this hiatus, really essentially into fear and anxiety of tomorrow, and bring myself back to now, into presence. So really what I see this is coming back to surrender, which is being present without intentions. Fun and play are without intentions too, non-attachment, no codependency on people, no reliance on people to meet your needs, your internal needs, for love and courage and strength and resourcefulness, resilience, happiness, peace. We mustn't try and get these from other people. And that's what I ended up doing in my hiatus. I ended up trying to seek relationships to meet those needs. Surrender is really just letting go of all this programming. It's all programming. And it wasn't like until I looked closely at my life and realized that all the stuff that caused so much pain and suffering in my life has had to do with programming that was given to me. It wasn't innate. None of this was innate or from my true source, from spirit. Can let that go, and so can you. Life can be about presence again. And we all know that when we really practice presence and flow, the grace of flow, we get the grace of our needs being provided. We get them provided. Just like when I was 18, I wasn't worried about my needs being provided for tomorrow. They were still being provided. So I hope this is encouraging for you. The spiritual path, the one that is peaceful, that is in flow, is about surrender. It's about letting go of all these false narratives, these stories that we've been telling ourselves. One day, I will be, I will have, just letting those go and being here now. Appreciate the people around you. Take time out to play. Include a ritual in your daily life that brings all of this home to you, that makes this so important, makes this your highest priority. That's what I believe is the spiritual path. It's coming back to now, into your true nature, and feeling that unshakable inner peace because of it. So I hope this has been helpful. If you did like this, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And have a beautiful day. See ya.